She stood there at the entrance, clutching her tiny clutch bag, her heels clicking nervously against the polished floor. Dozens of eyes darted in her direction, judging, whispering, laughing under their breath. In a world where first impressions of everything, she wasn't dressed like the glittering crowd inside. Her outfit was simple, understated, a sharp contrast to the flashing sequins and designer labels on display. It didn't take long for the fashion elite to look right past her, treating her like she didn't even exist. No smiles, no greetings, not even a second glance. Just cold shoulders and fake laughter echoing through the grand hall. Little did they know, the very brand they were flaunting tonight, the one being celebrated, photographed, and praised, belonged to her. She was the mind behind every design, every stitch, every runway moment. But for now, she kept her secret tucked away, watching as the same people who brushed her aside clambered to impress each other. The irony was almost too perfect. As the night went on, whispers started to ripple through the room. Murmurs turned into full-blown conversations. Faces that once looked right through her suddenly turned, eyes widening in shock. Phones buzzed with frantic messages, and a few brave ones even tried to casually walk over, pretending they had noticed her all along. But it was too late. The truth had already changed everything. What happened next would leave the entire fashion show stunned, and it was something they would never forget. Just a few hours earlier, she had slipped into the venue quietly, unnoticed by the photographers and ignored by the event organizers. Her name wasn't on any of the VIP guest lists because she didn't need it to be. She had built her fashion brand from the ground up, pouring years of hard work, creativity, and sacrifices into every piece. She knew the industry well enough to understand that most people cared more about appearances than the real story behind the clothes they wore. Her journey wasn't the typical fairy tale. There were no overnight successes or lucky breaks. She had started designing sketches in her tiny apartment, sending samples to anyone willing to take a chance on an unknown artist. Rejection after rejection piled up, but she never stopped. Every no only pushed her harder. Slowly, her designs caught the eye of a few rising stars. They didn't know her name back then, but they loved her work. And little by little her brand grew, first underground, then across runways she once only dreamed of. Tonight was supposed to be a celebration of that success. The brand she had nurtured was now one of the most talked about names in the fashion world. But instead of being welcomed with open arms, she was pushed aside, treated like an outsider. The same influencers and celebrities posing for photos under her brand's logo had no idea the woman they ignored was the one who had made it all possible. As she stood silently by the velvet ropes, she watched the chaos unfold. Whispers turned to stares, stares turned to awkward smiles. She could feel the shift in the air, but she wasn't about to make it easy for them. The real show hadn't even started yet. Across the room, the event manager was starting to panic. His phone was buzzing non-stop with messages from sponsors and brand representatives. Everyone was asking the same question. Why wasn't she being recognized? Why wasn't she seated at the front? He scanned the crowd, trying to spot her, feeling the pressure mount with every passing second. The show's success depended heavily on her brand's image tonight, and as she walked out, the damage would be impossible to fix. Meanwhile, some of the influencers who had brushed past her earlier were scrambling to save face. A few even hurried to snap selfies near her, hoping to pretend they had been close to her all along. One fashion blogger, known for her glamorous posts and flawless public image, quickly whispered to her photographer to get a candid shot, anything that made it look like they had shared a laugh or a friendly chat. But it was too obvious. The desperation in their smiles only made it worse. In the middle of all this, a rival designer watched everything unfold from a distance. He had competed against her brand for years, always feeling overshadowed by her quiet success. Tonight, he sensed an opportunity. If she chose to expose how badly she had been treated, it could cause a scandal big enough to shake the whole event, and he was ready to seize any fallout for his own gain. She stayed calm, almost too calm, quietly observing every move. She had learned long ago that the fashion industry was as much about timing as it was about talent. She wasn't just here for the glitz or the shallow applause. No, she had come with a plan, and as the tension in the room grew thicker, it was clear that something much bigger was about to happen. The lights in the hall began to dim, signaling the start of the main event. A hush fell over the crowd, but the tension didn't disappear. It only grew heavier. Everyone was waiting, but now they weren't just excited for the show. They were buzzing with curiosity, stealing glances toward the woman they had once ignored, now too afraid to approach her directly. Backstage, chaos brewed quietly. Staff whispered nervously into earpieces. Models adjusted their outfits, knowing that the brand's owner, the one person who could make or break their future careers, was standing just a few feet away, watching everything. The event manager wiped sweat from his brow, silently praying that the show would go smoothly. He knew one misstep tonight could turn a celebration into a complete disaster. Meanwhile, she remained silent, composed, almost untouchable. She wasn't interested in any fake apologies or sudden acts of kindness. She had already seen the truth. Her story wasn't about being accepted into their world. It was about reminding them exactly who she was, the creator they underestimated, the name they wore without even knowing the face behind it. Suddenly, a ripple of movement near the front row caught everyone's attention. A well-known magazine editor had risen from her seat, scanning the room with wide eyes. Word had finally reached her. The woman they had all dismissed was actually the founder and CEO of the very brand the entire night was built around. Whispers turned into gasps. The energy in the room shifted like a wave crashing down. The show's opening music began to play, louder and sharper than before. Every eye slowly turned to her. The spotlight was no longer on the stage. It was on her. And everyone was about to find out what happens when you snub the wrong person. Just as the spotlight seemed to settle on her, something unexpected happened. The runway show didn't start. The models stood frozen behind the curtain, waiting for a cue that never came. The music faded into an awkward silence. The event manager rushed to the side of the stage, speaking urgently into his headset. Something was wrong, and the entire room could feel it. From the corner of the hall, a new rumor started to spread like wildfire. A leaked memo had surfaced, and it wasn't good news. Someone had found out that the rival designer, the one lurking in the background, had secretly tried to claim credit for her brand's recent designs. Emails, contracts, backroom deals, all exposed. The betrayal wasn't just personal now. It was public, and it threatened to destroy everything she had worked so hard to build. Phones lit up as news spread. Influencers, bloggers, even fashion editors who had once ignored her were now scrambling for details, trying to figure out what side to stand on. Loyalty shifted by the second. Fake smiles dropped. Whispers turned into open arguments. The glamorous facade of the event was crumbling right before everyone's eyes, and she was standing at the center of it all, calm, powerful, unshaken. The rival designer, realizing his plan was falling apart, made a bold move. He walked toward her, trying to control the narrative before it spiraled out of his hands. Cameras snapped. Every pair of eyes locked onto them. The audience held its breath. Was this going to be a public confrontation? Would she expose everything here and now, or was there another plan hidden behind that calm smile? One thing was clear. The night wasn't just about a fashion show anymore. It was about revenge, truth, and a spotlight that couldn't be dimmed. And the real drama was only just beginning. The rival designer stopped just a few steps away from her, forcing a tight, nervous smile. He held out his hand, pretending to congratulate her in front of the flashing cameras. The crowd watched, frozen in anticipation. For a moment, it looked like she might shake his hand, let it all slide to keep the peace. But instead, she reached into her small clutch and pulled out a folded piece of paper, a legal document, signed and stamped, showing full ownership of her brand and exclusive rights to the latest collection. She didn't say a word. She simply handed it to him, her eyes steady, her expression unreadable. The rival designer's face turned pale as he read the paper, realizing he had no way to twist the story anymore. The photographers caught every moment, the stunned expressions, the shift of power so clear that even those who knew nothing about fashion could feel it. As he stumbled back, the runway lights suddenly flared to life. Models began walking, but this time it wasn't just any show. Every outfit now had a new detail, a small but clear signature stitched into the fabric, her name written in elegant, unmistakable letters. The crowd gasped as they saw it. The message was loud and clear. Asterisk, she wasn't just the owner. She was the creator, the heart, the soul of the entire brand. Asterisk. The audience erupted in applause, some standing, others frantically trying to film the moment. But just when it seemed like the story had reached its peak, she dropped one last surprise. As the final model strutted down the runway, the big screen behind the stage lit up, announcing the launch of her brand's own fashion house, completely independent, with a massive international deal already signed. She hadn't just survived their snubbing, she had turned it into her biggest victory yet. As the final cheers echoed through the hall, she stepped forward, no longer just a silent observer, but the undeniable center of the night. Those who had once turned their backs now rushed to offer compliments, hoping to be seen in her light. But she smiled politely, keeping her distance. She wasn't there for their approval anymore. She had already won by staying true to herself. The rival designer quietly disappeared into the crowd, his plan crushed under the weight of his own jealousy. The event manager, still wiping sweat from his forehead, rushed over to offer her a public apology, but she simply nodded, letting her success speak louder than any words ever could. Around her, the atmosphere had completely shifted. No longer seen as just another guest, she was now recognized for what she had always been, a true powerhouse in the fashion industry. Later that night, as the venue slowly emptied and the flashing cameras dimmed, she stood for a moment in the middle of the runway, looking around at the space that had once tried to exclude her. There was a quiet satisfaction in knowing she didn't have to fight for a seat at their table. She had built her own. Her story wasn't just about fashion. It was about believing in your vision even when no one else does. About letting actions, not appearances, define your worth. And about remembering that real power isn't handed over with invitations or fake smiles. It's earned quietly, steadily, until it can no longer be ignored. As she walked out into the cool night air, the city lights reflecting in her eyes, she knew this was only the beginning. They had snubbed her once, but from now on, the world would never forget her name.